All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name's Janet Monaco, and I have lived in Florida for almost 15 years. I came to Florida from New York to live my dream. When I came here, housing was inexpensive, insurance was cheap, and the dream to have my own business was well within my reach. I bought a pet store, Pet Pros in Rockledge in 1999, and at that time, business was really, really good. And I was able to open a second store and serve the community the way that I wanted to do that. Life was good, and things seemed to be really, really good, and they seemed like they couldn't get any better. And then we all remember 2004 and the hurricanes that came upon us, one after the other, after the other, after the other. My business was devastated by the loss of the hurricanes. Because of that loss, I had to close one store and sell my home to keep the passion that I have alive in me to keep my business going. Recently, I was diagnosed with diabetes, and as a small business owner, I have no insurance. So I discuss these things with my customers every day, and some of you are my customers and know we talk about politics and we talk about how the economy is. And I finally decided to discuss it with a good friend of mine, my friend Arna. And she said to me, "Janet, you really need to look at Barack Obama." And I said, "Well, I'm a Hillary supporter." And she said, "No, you look at Barack Obama." So one day I sat at home and I was watching TV on a Sunday morning and I heard this man speak. And I thought, wow, this man can change this country. Barack Obama knows we need a new way of doing business, which is why he has proposed an economic stimulus package and tax credits for working families like you and I. I'm also impressed by his plans for health care, as every American deserves health insurance. And I want to know, does everybody know what Monday is? So before I introduce him, why don't we say happy birthday to Mr. Obama. No, you wouldn't want me to do that. So please join me as I welcome Senator Bill Nelson, and ladies and gentlemen, the next President of the United States, Mr. Barack Obama.
Good morning, Brevard County and Central Florida. Isn't it something to have in the middle of the campaign the next president come to this part of Florida? I must admit, I've been working on Barack, telling him that it's this I-4 corridor of Florida that'll make the difference. I want you all to know what a special person Senator Obama is. He has many things that you all know, but one characteristic that you may not know: he listens and he learns. And over the course of time, as we have worked together and Barack has been here, he's done joint town hall meetings with me. He's responded to our concerns. He's here today for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is to tell you about what he wants to do with our space program. And let me just say this in introducing him. I could tell you so much about him. And our colleague, Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, the senior senator from Illinois, is with us. Where is Dick? There he is, right there. Dick is the Assistant Majority Leader, the number 2 in the United States Senate. We are a Senate family, and we're concerned about each other. And so over this course of time, as Barack has been getting the nomination, he has been listening. And let me just say this, and it's going to be very brief. I've been talking to him about what a young president named John F. Kennedy did for this nation. Who dared to say that we're going to do the impossible, that we were going to the moon and back within 9 years, and the ripple effects that has had in the spin-offs of technology into changing our very quality of life, and what it did for our young people, and a generation of scientists and mathematicians and engineers and high technology that came out of that vision. And so I want you to know this is a man that I think has that vision, not only for our space program, but for making America great as our potential is. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you, Brevard County. Thank you, Titusville. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, everybody have a seat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's nice. Nelson says he's got some cake for everybody. No? Well, listen, what a wonderful reception, a wonderful welcome. Thank you so much, everybody. I am grateful to all of you for being here today. I love you back. And I'm appreciative of all of you here. There are a couple of key thank yous I want to make. First of all, there aren't that many senators who are as intelligent, as effective, as serious about serving their constituencies, that work as hard as your own senator right here in Florida, Senator Bill Nelson. Give him a big round of applause. Does a great job. Plus, he's an astronaut. How cool is that? You know, senators are a dime a dozen, but astronauts, now that's serious. I want to thank also my colleague, as was pointed out. He's traveling with me today. He is a great friend, and he's working hard for working families all across America. My senior senator, Dick Durbin, who's here. Give him a big round of applause. I want to thank Janet Monaco for the great introduction. I was telling her that she is probably the only person that my daughters would be impressed by on this lineup, because she's a pet store owner. And now that rates with a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old girl, especially ones who are all geared up about getting a dog. So, but I'm grateful for Janet's support and for her introducing me. I want to thank Dr. Jim Drake, who's the president of BCC. I want to thank all the members of the Community College Board of Trustees who are here. Please, at least a couple of them. I want to thank Dr. Linda Medema, who's the provost of BCC. She was here a moment ago. There she is back there. And I want to thank State Representative Tony Sasso. And we've got the mayors both of Titusville and Cocoa Beach. Please have them stand, please. Now, this is a town hall meeting, which means I want some interaction, which I can tell will not be hard. This is not a shy group. I know it's a little bit warm, and so I'm going to try to keep things moving. I do want to make some remarks at the front end, if you don't mind, just to talk a little bit about some issues that are going to be central to this campaign and issues that face families all across Florida, and then we're going to open it up and we'll have a bunch of time for questions and answers. You know, I've also often said that this election is a defining moment in our history. On major issues like the war in Iraq or the warming of the planet, the decisions that we make this November could set the course not just for us, but for future generations. You don't have to watch TV or read the newspapers to know that something's happening out there. You feel it in your own lives. You feel it in your own communities. July was the 7th straight month of job loss in this country. We've lost over 460,000 jobs since the beginning of this year. Gas prices are out of control. You all know that. Food prices are soaring. If you are lucky enough to have health care, your co-pays, your deductibles, your premiums have all gone through the roof. We have experienced the highest rate of foreclosure since the Great Depression in this country. Back in the 1990s, your incomes grew by $6,000. Since George Bush took office, your incomes have gone down $1,000 in real terms. Florida, yesterday, it was official that Florida is in the midst of its first recession, a contraction of the economy in 16 years. First time in 16 years that the economy has shrunk instead of grown. I don't need to tell you this because you're seeing it in your own lives and your own neighborhoods. For millions of families, these anxieties just keep on getting worse. And as a consequence, people are losing faith in that fundamental American promise, which is that if you work hard, you're going to be able to build a life for yourself and build a better life for your children and your grandchildren. That's the essence of the American dream, that sense of intergenerational responsibility, that you can make it if you try in America. But more importantly, you can leave behind a better world for your children. People feel like that dream is slipping away. Now, part of this, if we're fair, is that the economy is changing in some fundamental ways. We are now competing in a global economy. And so the children of Titusville, the children of Brevard County, are now competing against children in Indiana. But also they're competing against children in China and children in India. Anywhere that there's an internet connection, jobs can move. And because of this revolution in technology and automation, we are all going to have to adapt. We're all going to have to work harder and work smarter and train our children better to compete in this global economy. I think most people understand that. But what people also recognize is that the economic problems that we're having are not just due to changes in the economy or technology or the inevitabilities of the business cycle. People understand that the reason things aren't working so well is because of irresponsible decisions in Washington and on Wall Street. Now, in recent years, we've been reminded of an essential truth that you can't have a thriving Wall Street and a suffering Main Street. When wages are flat and prices are rising, the economy as a whole suffers. When a reckless few game the system, as we saw in this housing crisis where predatory loans were being given out and nobody was paying attention to whether repayment could be made and people were being induced into purchasing homes they couldn't afford, that everybody suffers. When special interests put their thumb on the scales and distort the free market so that the insiders are getting special tax breaks or special deals, then the people who compete by the rules, they end up coming in last. When our government fails to meet its basic obligations, for example, to provide oversight and regulation to the financial system, then all of America pays a heavy price. So we have a choice to make in this election. We can either choose a new direction, or we can keep on doing the same things we've been doing. Now, my opponent believes we're on the right course. John McCain examined George Bush's economic record. He said he thought we had made great economic progress. One of John McCain's chief economic advisors said that this was just a mental recession, that you losing your job was all in your head. And because John McCain thinks things have been going okay, he wants to run for George Bush's third term and continue the same economic policies. Tax breaks to the wealthy, tax breaks to corporations, no agenda for providing serious relief to working families, and to start dealing with problems like health care in a serious way. Well, I just want to ask you a simple question, maybe a familiar one. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago or 8 years ago? Can you afford another 4 years of George Bush economic policy? You want change. You want change. Look, this should be pretty clear cut. We have tried these policies. We've seen how they don't work. It's time to leave them in the past, where they belong. It's time for something new. It's time to restore balance and fairness to our economy. And that's why I'm running for President of the United States of America. Now, let me be specific. Let me be specific about some of the things we need to do. Starts with short-term relief for middle-class families, working families all across America. If I'm elected, I will put a $1,000 tax cut into your pocket. 95% of Americans will get tax relief under my plan. I will provide a mortgage interest deduction for people who currently don't qualify so that homeowners get a little bit of relief. We're going to eliminate income taxes. We're going to eliminate income taxes for seniors who are making $50,000 a year or less, so they get a little bit of relief. And I'm going to support parents who are struggling right now by expanding the child care credit and making sure that families have paid sick leave, because a lot of folks don't. And we're going to make sure that we have equal pay for equal work so that every woman in America is being treated the same way that men are being treated, because that's just the right thing to do. Now, I don't want to wait until I'm president to do it. I want it done now. So yesterday I announced a two-part emergency plan to help struggling families make ends meet and get our economy back on track. First part of my plan is to tax the windfall profits of oil companies. And to use some of that money to help you deal with rising gas prices by getting a rebate to you right away. Now, this is an area where my opponent and I disagree. He opposes using that money to help you pay your bills. The other day we learned that ExxonMobil made nearly $12 billion in 3 months. To put it another way, they made $1,500 every second. Now, that's more than $300,000 in the time it takes you to fill up your gas tank. Senator McCain actually wants to give oil companies like Exxon another $4 billion in tax cuts. I don't know about you, but I don't think we should be giving tax breaks to oil companies at a time that they are doing better than they have ever done before, and you are doing worse. I think it's time to use some of those record profits to help pay for your record prices at the pump by putting $1,000 emergency energy rebate into your pockets right now. Second part of the plan. $50 billion stimulus to help jumpstart job creation and help local communities that are struggling due to our economic downturn. Half of this stimulus would go to state governments that are facing big budget shortfalls. They're having to lay people off precisely at the time when there are critical services that are needed. We're going to invest the other half in our national infrastructure so we can create new jobs, rebuilding roads, rebuilding bridges, save over 1 million jobs that are in danger of being cut. We have to do more, though, than provide short-term relief. All those things are just in the short term to help tide people over, but we've got to rebuild our economy in a much more fundamental way. We've got to secure our long-term prosperity and strengthen our economy for the 21st century. And this is where the issue that Bill Nelson brought up, I think, is relevant. You know, one of the areas where we're in danger of losing our competitive edge is in science and technology, and nothing symbolizes that more than our space program. You know, when I've written about this in my book. I grew up in Hawaii. And I still remember sitting on my grandfather's shoulders as some of the astronauts were brought in after their capsules had landed in the middle of the Pacific. And I could just barely see them. I was waving. I had an American flag. And I remember my grandfather explaining to me, this is what America's all about. We can do anything. when we put our mind to it. We can do anything when we put our mind to it. And that was what the space program described, that sense of possibility and always, reaching out to new frontiers. When I was growing up, NASA inspired the world with achievements that we're still proud of. And today we have an administration that sets ambitious goals for NASA without giving NASA the support it needs to reach them. As a result, NASA's had to cut back on research, trim their program, which means that after the space shuttle shuts down in 2010, we're going to have to rely on Russian spacecrafts to keep us in orbit. So let me be clear. We cannot cede our leadership in space. That's why I'm going to close the gap, ensure that our space program doesn't suffer when the shuttle goes out of service. We may extend an additional shuttle launch. We're going to work with Bill Nelson to add at least one more flight beyond 2010 by continuing to support NASA funding, by speeding the development of the shuttle's successor, by making sure that all those who work in the space industry in Florida do not lose their jobs when the shuttle is retired, because we can't afford to lose their expertise. But more broadly, we need a real vision for the next stage of space exploration. And to help formulate this vision, I'm going to reestablish the National Aeronautics and Space Council so that we can develop a plan to explore the solar system, a plan that involves both human and robotic missions, and enlist both international partners and the private sector. And as America leads the world to long-term exploration of the moon and Mars and beyond, let's also tap NASA's ingenuity to build the airplanes of tomorrow and to study our own planet so we can combat global climate change. Under my watch, NASA will inspire the world once again and make America stronger, and it's going to help grow the economy right here in Brevard County and right here in Florida. That's what we're going to do. That's what this election's all about. It's about raising our sights, seizing the moment, reclaiming our destiny. And yet, at a time when the stakes could not be higher, when the challenges facing our country could not be more severe, my opponent is talking about Brittany. He's talking about Paris. Can you imagine that? Well, here we are, we're facing huge recession, home foreclosures, people out of work, global warming, terrorism, and he's talking about Paris. Is that the best they can do? The American people deserve better. The American people need some new ideas. The American people need a new vision for America. That's the same old politics, the same old trickery, the same old distractions, the same old divisions. We're going to try something different. That's the choice we face in November. We can choose to go another 4 years without truly solving this energy crisis, or we can invest in renewable energies, create up to 5 million green jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced, build America's green energy sector, investing in solar and wind and biodiesel, all of which will make us less vulnerable to foreign oil, all of which will bring down oil prices in the medium term. That's what we can choose to do in this election. We can choose to do nothing about losing jobs and shuttered factories for another 4 years, or we can encourage job creation in America. We can end tax breaks for companies that ship jobs overseas, give those tax breaks to companies that are investing here in the United States of America. We can rebuild our infrastructure and invest in science and research and lay broadband lines all across America and remake our electricity grid so it's energy efficient. We can create millions of jobs, and if people tell you we can't afford it, you just remind them we're spending $10 to $12 billion a month in Iraq. If we're spending $10 billion in Iraq, we can spend some of that money right here in Brevard County, right here in Florida, putting people back to work. We can choose to go another 4 years with a broken healthcare system, where we can finally guarantee healthcare for everybody who needs it and make it affordable for everybody who has it, and cut healthcare costs for manufacturers and small businesses to help them become more competitive. That's a choice we can make in this election. We can choose to be mired in the same education debate that's consumed Washington for all these years, or we can start getting serious about education, investing in early childhood education to close the achievement gap, invest in our teachers by paying them higher salaries and giving them more support and expecting more from them. And we can make college affordable for every young person in America, a $4,000 tuition credit in exchange for national service, every student, every year. We can do that. That's a choice we face in November. We can choose another 4 years of the same reckless fiscal policies that have created a mountain of debt for future generations. Or we can get serious about remaking our government, eliminating waste, making sure that it's responsive to the needs of the American people, winding back this war in Iraq that I believe should have never been authorized and should have never been waged, rolling back the Bush tax cuts on the wealthiest and on corporations so we can give relief to Americans who need it. That's a choice we face in November. Those are the choices we face. We can choose to stay on the same well-worn, misguided path that we've been on, or we can strike out in a new direction. We can reclaim the idea that here in this country you can make it if you try. And in the end, that's all that the American people are asking for. You know, the American people are self-reliant, they are independent. They don't expect government to solve all their problems. You don't expect that. What you expect is, if you're able and willing to work, you should be able to find a job that pays a living wage. That you should be able to achieve the American dream of home ownership if you're doing the right thing. That you shouldn't be bankrupt when you get sick. That you should be able to send your child to a good school and to college, even if you're not rich. That you should be able to retire with some dignity and some respect. That's what we're fighting for. That's what this election's about. That we can pass on that American dream to the next generation. But we've got to choose to do it right here, right now. And if you will stand with me, if you will vote for me, if you will organize with me, if you'll knock on doors with me, if you will fight with me, then I promise you, we will not just win Florida, we'll win this election. And you and I together, we're going to change the country and change the world. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we got some time for questions. Everybody have a seat. There are no rules to the question and answers. You just raise your hand. We got microphones in the audience. I'm not going to be able to get to every question. I want to excuse everybody in advance because we're probably going to have more than the time will allow. If you have questions that aren't answered, then try to reach one of our volunteers or our staff, and we'll make sure to get an answer to you. The only other thing I'm going to say is we're going to go boy, girl, to make sure that there's no bias here. I'm gonna start with that gentleman with the camera around his neck. He was the first one to pop up. He was the first one to pop up.
Mr. Obama, I do not need a microphone.
Oh, you do. I want everybody to be able to hear this excellent question.
Mr. Obama.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming to Brevard County. It means a lot to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
My friends call me Zach, and I'd like you to do that too,
Zach,
sir.
I'm happy to call you Zach.
My question to you, sir. I'm a 64-year-old man that's working every day. I've been told by the Social Security Administration that I'm making too much money. I have gone 7 months of my qualifying and have not received a check because I'm making too much money. I would like to know if you would be kind enough to tell the citizens, the senior citizens in this country and in Brevard County, would you eliminate the chance where I have to work until I'm 66 to get any kind of money? It's my money, and I'd like to have it back. So would you?
Well,
would you please expand a little bit on what you'll do for Social Security and your senior citizens, sir? Thank you very much.
Zach, first of all, you look great. You know, so you're staying in good shape. You're eating right. You're trim. You know, I'm telling you. If I look like you when I'm 64, I'll be happy. I don't know your particular situation, so I don't want to talk about the details of your issues. Although I'm happy to have my staff contact you afterwards. But let me talk broadly about my theory about Social Security. Social Security, I believe, is the most successful social program ever devised in America. It has lifted millions of people out of poverty. Millions of people have been lifted out of poverty. So many seniors are completely reliant on Social Security. So my philosophy around Social Security is whatever makes it stronger, I'm for. Whatever makes it weaker or undermines the basic foundation that this is a social insurance program that is there when you need it, then I'm against. Now, the only thing I will say, Zach, is I disagree with you a little bit about your characterization of Social Security. It's not actually your money. Your money went to pay for seniors before you. We've already spent your money. Right? I just want you to know. Your money is long gone. The money that's going, that will be going into your pocket is the money of there's a guy behind you, he's paying right now. His money. It's the earlier generation's money. It's the younger generation's money that pays for the older generation. And that's the intergenerational commitment of Social Security. This is one of the reasons why privatization is such a bad idea. There are two reasons why privatization is a bad idea. Number one, because Social Security depends on the current generation of workers paying for current retirees, and then it keeps on going. If you started privatizing accounts, if young people suddenly were putting their money into their own private accounts, you'd have to replace all that money that's going to help seniors retire right now. That would cost $1 trillion, which, by the way, we don't know where that would come from. So the second and more important reason why privatization is a bad idea is imagine if the day before you retire, that great stock that you had been hearing about, that you had decided to shift all your money into because you were going to make a killing, called Enron, didn't do too well. Suddenly, you're broke on the eve of retirement. And the concept behind Social Security is we want you to invest in the stock market. We want you to have other savings strategies. In fact, I've put forward a plan to help to say that every employer has to set up some sort of automatic savings account, and the government will help start it off with a $500 kicker to encourage people to save outside of the Social Security system. We want to encourage that, but Social Security, we want to preserve as that baseline, that floor that you can't go beneath. So we've got to maintain that. That's why I'm opposed to privatization. John McCain disagrees with me on this. He believes in partial privatization, and I think that would weaken the system. So that's a major difference between John McCain and myself. Now, what I also believe is that as the population gets older and we've got more retirees per worker, and that's just going to be happening because the baby boom generation is aging. We're going to have to figure out how to fill that gap of more money going out and less money coming in. If we don't do anything, there's going to be an effective benefit cut. And by the time retirees are coming on board around 2040, they'll be getting about 75 cents per dollar that's been promised. If we're going to do something about that now, then we've got to start fixing the problem now. And some people have proposals to raise the retirement age. I don't think that's a good idea. Some people have ideas to raise the tax, the payroll tax. I don't think that's a good idea. Some people have the idea of cutting benefits. I think that's a terrible idea because seniors are already struggling. That's why I'm saying that if you have Social Security, you're making less than $50,000 a year, you shouldn't have to pay taxes at all on Social Security so that you can keep more of that money to help pay bills. One thing that might work is to raise the cap on the payroll tax. Now understand what this means. Right now, you only pay payroll tax, your Social Security tax, on the first $102,000 of income. Now what that means is for 95% of the people, you're paying Social Security on every dime that you earn. But if you're my good friend Warren Buffett, who's worth $56 billion, and who knows what he made last year, he's paying payroll tax on only 0.00001 or less percentage of his income. And that's not fair. And he says it's not fair. So we might look at a way of raising the cap so that the very wealthy are paying a little bit more to stabilize the system over the long term. All right, so that's my concept. All right, it's a woman's turn. It is a lady's turn. All right, there's a young lady right back there.
Put down your name and your contact info.
Yeah, can we get a mic way up there? She needs a mic. That's why we have young people on the mics, so they can run up and down these stairs. It's coming. You can go ahead and pass it to her. She'll
Hi.
give it back. Hi.
My name's Misty. I'm a college student. I go to University of Central Florida. Woo! I actually graduated from BCC. I was wondering, you mentioned helping college students out to pay for schooling. Could you further explain to me how you're going to do that and
Yes.
why I should give you my vote?
Yes. Well, because I'm going to help you pay for your college. All right, so we're going to do a couple of things. Number one, I want to expand the Pell Grant program because a lot of young people still rely on that. Number two, this is something that Dick Durbin and I have been working on. Dick's been a real leader on this, and it's tough to do, but it's the right thing to do, is to cut out the middleman, the banks, in the student loan program. Banks are still making profits, billions of dollars of profits, on the student loan program that's guaranteed by the federal government. I mean, it's one thing for them to charge you a lot of interest on a program where they might lose money. But if the federal government's backing it, why do we need them? Cut them out, use that money to expand the Pell Grants or lower the interest rates on loans or expand eligibility. Number three, $4,000 tuition credit every student, every year, in exchange for community service. In exchange for community service. So so you can discharge this obligation while you're in school, working in a homeless shelter or veterans home. You can, after school, make a commitment to join the Peace Corps or teach in an underfunded, underserved school, or be a nurse in an underserved hospital. There'll be a whole range of ways that you can serve, but you put in that service, we're going to pay for a big chunk of your college. How much? We've got the provost here. How much, if you're taking a full course load at BCC, what would just tuition cost for the year? It costs about $4,000, right? All right, we got some students. It's around $4,000. So basically, community college, we're going to make you free in exchange for national service. And it would probably cover 2/3 of the tuition for a four-year college or university. So you'd still have books, and you'd still have other expenses. But the point is, you wouldn't be leaving school with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 worth of debt, which means that you could get your life started and actually think about buying a house or starting a family without that burden. I think that's a good reason to vote for me, because John McCain doesn't have that agenda. All right. It's a guy's turn. All right, since this big guy's standing right behind me.
Senator Obama, we want to thank you for coming and sharing in the legacy of Harry and Harry Moore, we salute you for coming to Titusville.
Thanks.
And my question to you, since we know that Senator McCain has experience, my question to you is, in your administration, what role would you have Senator McCain and Senator Lieberman playing in your administration?
See, you're setting me up to get in trouble. Right here. I would have them, Senator McCain, I would have him serve in the role of loyal opposition, in the minority. And, now, there's an important function to be served there. I mean, it's important to have an opposition that is keeping you on your toes and giving you a hard time and calling you out if you're not doing what you say you're going to do. That's part of what is good about democracy. I will tell you, though, that the most important thing in terms of changing Washington is to make sure that all of you have the power to hold your representatives and your president accountable. That's the most important thing. And that's why at the start of this campaign we said we're not going to take PAC money or money from federal registered lobbyists, because I want you to know that you're funding my campaign, and that means that you can withdraw your support of my campaign, and that'll really mean something. That's the reason why I fought in the Senate for new ethics rules to eliminate meals and gifts and use of corporate jets from lobbyists so that I would be more accountable to you. That's why we've got proposals to put legislation on the internet and to have virtual town hall meetings so that you constantly know what's going on and that we're disclosing how we're operating and how we're doing business in Washington. The idea is, if you get involved, if you are focused on what's happening, then, people stop misbehaving. Because if they keep misbehaving, you vote them out of office. And part of what's exciting about this campaign is to see all the people suddenly taking an interest in being engaged in politics once again. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent or a Green Party member. I want you to be focused and involved in our democracy, because that's how we're going to make it work. All right, it's a woman's turn. Young lady back there.
Thank you for calling me young, Senator.
Everybody's young in here.
I'm also on Social Security, but I work full-time. I have a question about the oceans. I understand that you're committed to space exploration. I would hope that you would seriously look at 98% of this world that is underwater so that we can have people investigating what's going on down there and what kinds of things might be beneficial to us.
Well, listen, I think it's a great question. It's a great question, first of all, because we know that the oceans are undergoing profound changes. And that starts with the issue of climate change. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it's already hot here. You've noticed that, right? So this whole idea of the planet getting warmer is not that great for Florida, especially because, all joking aside, I think most of you know that as the water temperatures get warmer, that makes the force and the frequency of hurricanes much greater. And so Florida, more than just about any state, has a stake in us dealing with the issue of climate change in a serious way. That's why I've proposed a cap and trade system where we're charging polluters for the carbon they send to the atmosphere. We take that money and we reinvest it in clean, renewable energies that can help us roll back what's happening. But in the interim, the warming temperatures are, as well as a lot of human behavior, is having a profound effect on the oceans. And we've got to research what's taking place there. You know, we are losing entire species. The ecosystem in our oceans are changing. And, you know, in some cases, overfishing. Commercial fishing is depleting key stocks that have fed humankind for not just centuries, but millennia. And so making sure that we're investing in the science and the research around our oceans, making sure that our practices are sustainable, that has to be a top priority. And it may be that there are ways that we can actually cultivate our oceans that help to give us answers to issues like energy. For example, algae, turns out, might be a very good source of us creating biodiesel. And there's a lot of research taking place right now. This is the kind of commitment to science that we have to have here in the United States. And I mentioned NASA earlier. I want to tell you that you know, I know it's still being reported that we were talking about delaying some aspects of the Constellation program to pay for our early education program. I told my staff we're going to find an entirely different offset, because we've got to make sure that the money that's going into NASA for basic research and development continues to go there. That has been a top priority for us. This is an administration that's been anti-science. That has, whether it's on stem cell research, whether it's on climate change, they have rejected science. I want to reverse that trend. I want us to be a science-based society. And I want us to invest in science. Because that's what's going to drive our economy over the long term. You know, that's what's going to drive our economy over the long term. Okay, it is a gentleman's turn. There was a gentleman here who was standing up here. No, don't shout out now. I'm calling on people. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Marion Brady. I wrote this morning about 5 o'clock. American education policy is being shaped by educational amateurs in Congress, the Business Roundtable, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the publishing industry. If you become president, will you devise a workable system to give professional educators a voice?
Well, I think absolutely. Are you a teacher or administrator?
I began teaching in 1952. I'm 81.
You're 81?
81.
What are you eating? Maybe I need to move down to Florida. All these, look at that guy, 81 years old. That's a good-looking guy. 81.
Thank you. And I'm a long-time columnist for Knight Ridder in matters educational.
Well, see, I didn't know that. I wasn't trying to butter you up. I didn't know you were a reporter.
And these are questions. This is one of several questions that I've asked Danielle Gray. And
well, she's excellent in my office. But you are exactly right that we generally have not had enough input from professional educators and those who, again, are looking at the data and the facts when it comes to education in designing our education programs. And what I want to do is to ensure that not only our Secretary of Education, but some of the lower ranks in the the sub-cabinet members, that they are meeting regularly with councils of teachers and educators and then actually going to schools and observing what's taking place in the field so that we're not getting a bunch of abstract ideological arguments or proposals, but instead we're having people see what works and what doesn't. And listen, I want everybody to understand that most of what happens in schools is happening on a local level. The federal government only supplies 7% of total education funding. We take great pride in America in the idea of local control for schools. And I understand that. But we are now competing against countries that we used to run laps around. I mean, we used to be 30 years ahead of other countries in terms of high school graduation rates or college graduation rates. Hey. We had a little photographer there. And now we're mediocre. We're in the middle of the pack when it comes to advanced nations. And so we do have to redesign an education system that is still based on the agricultural era. Now, how we do that, it can't be whatever is trendy, whatever sounds good. We've got to ground it in research and what is actually working on the ground. I think we have to emphasize math and science research much more, or math and science education much more. I think that we have to redesign No Child Left Behind so that we have high standards, so that we have high standards, but those standards are not just measured by a single high-stakes standardized test. That is forcing teachers to teach to the test. I think we have to provide much more professional development for our teachers and give them time to design curriculums. And we should have master teachers who are working with new young teachers to provide them the best practices they need. And I think we have to have accountability measures, but they should be designed with teachers and with educators and not imposed on them so that they feel a sense of ownership about it. I will tell you, though, and I've said this before, there's one other thing that you need if we're going to have our schools working, and that is parents. You got to parent. Parents have to parent. We've got to turn off the television set. We've got to put away the video games. You've got to meet with your child's teacher and make sure they're doing their homework. And listen, if your child is misbehaving in school, don't curse out the teacher. Right? Be a partner. Be a partner with the education system to instill a sense of learning in your child. That's what that child's going to need to succeed. That's the best gift, the best inheritance that you can provide. All right, I've got time for 2 more questions. Young lady right there in the black who's waving and dancing all over the place.
Thank you very much. My name is Gloria Battle, and I'm a native Floridian. I have 2 questions. My first one is, when was the last time you had a home-cooked meal? And my serious question is...
No, that's a serious question. That's a serious question. It's been too long. What do you got at home?
He's a very good cook.
Oh, I see. You're going to make him cook. I thought you were offering to cook.
Well, we'll do it together.
All right.
You're welcome.
Okay.
But once you do become president, I know we're not going to see an immediate change in the recession, but about how long do you think it will be before we see that change?
Well, let me give you a serious response. First of all, we don't know that the economy's bottomed out yet. I think we're monitoring the situation very carefully. It depends in part on some of the steps that are being taken now over the next several months. That's why I want a second stimulus package to help jumpstart the economy. That's why I want to start with these energy rebates to help people get through the next 4 months. I think if we can tide over and stabilize the housing system, give the financial system a little more confidence, then we're still going to be in a recession, but it may not be as deep. If we don't take some of these steps, then when the next president takes office in January, we could still be in the midst of a very difficult time. So I can't predict exactly what the situation is going to be like should I take office. I can tell you, though, that my priorities are going to be to provide families with immediate relief, with tax cuts, to provide some immediate stability to the financial and the housing system, including with some additional oversight and regulation so that people know exactly what they're getting into when it comes to a housing loan, for example, on both sides of the transaction, by the borrowers and the lenders. And then we've got these long-term issues that we've got to deal with, but we've got to start, even though they're long-term in terms of payoff, we've got to start right now. And energy is a great example of that. Look, if we start now, then it's conceivable that 20 years from now, none of our cars run on gasoline. Right? That's possible. Which would have an enormous impact on our economy. But we can't wait 20 years to get started. We've got to start now. It's conceivable that our buildings become 30, 40, 50% more energy efficient. The truth is that most of our buildings, most of our building codes are so behind the times that if we just changed light bulbs, changed how the heating and the air conditioning systems are working, insulated properly, people right now could save 30, 40% on their electricity bills. And by the way, there are businesses who are making big money doing exactly that. But they're not getting a lot of encouragement from Washington. So we've got to take those steps immediately. That's going to be one of my top priorities. And I'm confident. Here's the thing I want everybody to understand. We're going through a tough time, but we've been through tougher times before. I mean, don't forget, we've gone through a revolutionary war. We've gone through Civil War. We've gone through slavery. We've gone through Jim Crow. We've gone through a Great Depression. We've gone through 2 world wars. You know, I mean, my grandparents, when they were growing up in the Depression, you know, 1 out of 3 people didn't have a job. So we've been through tougher times. We are a resilient people, and when we come together, when we're unified, we can't be stopped. But it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work for us to get this done. I'm ready to do the work, and I suspect you are too. I'm going to make this the last question right here. This gentleman right here.
Yeah, welcome, Mr. Maaba. My question is about alternative fuel. Mm-hmm. We have the technology already. We have hydrogen vehicles, we have E85 vehicles, but we don't have the infrastructure.
Right.
Now, there's roughly 120 to 140,000 gas stations across the U.S. Now, most of them are independently owned, but they don't make the profits off these gas prices that these oil companies are doing. So they can't afford to put in a hydrogen pump, E85 pump. And the oil companies surely are not going to allow them to give them the money to do it. So my question is how do we put the infrastructure in?
Well, this is exactly what a bill that I already passed was designed to help do. In the last energy bill, I put a provision in there, a major tax credit for gas stations to install E85 pumps to make it more accessible. Now, well, we haven't seen enough of them because people haven't been utilizing this tax credit, and the administration hasn't been marketing it as aggressively as it needs to. And we saw a couple instances where oil companies were actually discouraging their vendors from installing them. It has to be part of an overall comprehensive package. If we're providing tax credits, now this is going to be the last question, so I'm not going to have a long dialogue. I just want to finish this up. If we are providing the effective tax credits and saying this is going to be a major part of our energy agenda to build the distribution networks and systems that are required, and we will work with the private sector in a public-private partnership to get that done, then we will get it done. It's not just, by the way, pumps for E85 or other biodiesel. It's also, for example, our electricity grid. If we set up windmills right now in one part of the country, it's very hard to get that electricity to another part of the country without huge leakage. And that's because we've got an archaic electricity grid. 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 Archaic electricity grid.